All right, everybody, my name is Connor Little. I'm a junior here at UNF, and I'm going to try to persuade you today to not vote for Bernie Sanders. Now, let's start talking about Bernie Sanders just in general. He was a member of the Young People's Socialist Society while he was in college. He went to college in Brooklyn and then transferred to the prestigious University of Chicago. During that time, he was a social activist, and he was the leader of the failed Liberty Union Party that started in 1971 and went through 1979. This is pretty much a college socialist group of political guys. And it ended up failing. It didn't really do very well, but it did do well in one specific city, and that was Burlington, Vermont. So after it failed in 1979 and around 1980, he started getting people in that area kind of believed in him, and he ran for mayor and he won by 10 votes in a 5-person race. He did a lot of there. He did a lot of public works. I mean, still like a small town. But he eventually won a spot in that House of Representatives, and he was the first independent to hold a seat in over 40 years. Now, he was an independent because he really didn't resonate with the Democratic Party. He was further left than that, more of like a true socialist. He was a vocal opponent of the Iraq War, even though he voted for the authorization of military use in the Middle East. And he was elected senator of Vermont in 2007. He's currently running for the President of the United States of America. So what is a democratic socialist? He runs under being a democratic socialist, not like a direct socialist. Now, what is a democratic socialist? A democratic socialist is a socialist running for president in a democracy. 47% of Americans aren't even willing to vote for a socialist, so if you're going to run for president, you got to kind of name it something different. So don't look too far into what he's really saying he is. Why would somebody vote for Bernie Sanders? There's a lot of programs that he has. Free tuition, expanded Social Security, expanded Medicare, free child care, free health care. There's a lot of things that he's going to give you that you don't already have right now. Now, my question to that is, how much would that cost? And Wall Street Journal obviously had the same question. So they went into it and kind of figured out what the true cost would be of all this spending. And they came out with, even without the child care, because there's no proposal yet on what that would be, they came out to be a little over, I think it's around $18.6 trillion of increased government spending. Now, if you're a smart, logical person like I am, and I'm sure many of you are, you're going to ask this question: how can we afford that? And the scariest fact of the matter is that nobody really knows how we're going to pay for it. He has no tax plan set forth. And of course, we're going to know it's going to be a progressive tax with higher taxes on the rich, but there's no real scale to that or anything to really compare it to. We just know that tax is going to be a lot higher. And some economists say that are especially proponents of Bernie Sanders, they say pretty much it doesn't matter how much spending you have, because no matter how far in debt you get, you can always get your way out of it. Because the United States prints its own dollar, we have our own monetary system. Now, my problem with that is that you're going to get so far in debt and people are only spending money on ourselves, and the government's not, sharing the wealth to the citizens as much, so there's going to be less buying power. We're a buying nation. We're internationally known as a buyer. And a lot of the foreign countries come in and buy our debt in form of treasury bonds in order to help them keep selling to us. But what happens when we lose that buying power as a nation because we're spending so much money on these government work programs? I'm really starting to think that maybe we lose that power as a buying nation. And Bernie's main thing is that it works in Sweden. It's this European model of progressive economics. But the main problem is it hasn't worked in Sweden. It was tried in Sweden, yes, it was implemented in Sweden, but they're actually going away from that. They've decreased taxes by 20% on the wealthy. This free tuition that they say they have is really just a debt taken on at a young age, and it really only comes out to be about 30% less than a college education in America. So it's really not that abnormally different, and they're actually moving more into a conservative view. And their economists have come out and said that they rejected democratic socialism not because they didn't like it, but because it failed. Why do people want this? So now you've kind of looked at it, you've kind of seen how much spending is. So why would people want this? Here's why. Read his quote. There is far too little discussion about the collapse of the middle class, almost no discussion at all about the incredible income and wealth inequality in this country, and the fact that we're moving toward an oligarchic form of society. Wealth inequality is a problem. If you're a hardworking average American and you're making $50,000 a year and you see all these people making so much more money than you, you're going to wonder really why. Let's look at wealth inequality in America. Here's the top 1% in America and how much money they make. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's 22.46%. That's a pretty big thing. So maybe Bernie's onto something here. Maybe he's got something. Until you do all the research, the real wealth inequality. If you look at the overall 1% throughout time, it's really just, if you just adjust it for inflation, it really hasn't grown. It's the same. It's the top 0.01%. Your Mark Zuckerbergs, your tech billionaires, those guys are the guys that push it so far up because they're making just exponentially more. There's only a few of those guys, and trying to mold your whole system of government around trying to tax those guys more really doesn't work because there's so few of them. Now let's look at this harrowed list of republics that have adopted socialism and seen what happened to them. As you can see, it's really kind of like a sweet group of people here. You have, Roman Republic that became the Roman Empire that ceased to exist after 100 years. You have Cuba, Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, North Korea, France, pre-Napoleon. Well, let's look at the pattern here. They came in as a powerful entity. They were doing very well. And then they adopted this form of socialism, and it created a system to where one guy or one specific small group was able to take over the entire country and do whatever they wanted. Why? Well, I argue, and I've argued before, that really all money is, any kind of monetary good, or any kind of monetary status you have in the bank is really just a number of decisions you're able to make. If you have more money, that means you can buy more power. It means you have people that can step up against, a government or a central figure. When in a socialist government, you lose that because everybody has typically about the same amount of money. So you lose your ability to fight back as a society. It takes the complete individualism aspect out of politics. Now, you got my boy here. My boy is Alexis de Tocqueville. He was a Frenchman who came over to America really to inspect the jail systems. And what he found was he really stumbled upon the kind of American form of republic. It was pre-industrial. It was very pure in the way that it was running. And he had just seen what had happened, when Napoleon took over France and they had all those raids or all those mass killings in the streets and all of that because of all the tyranny that was happening. And he has some really awesome quotes, and I want to share them with you. Democracy and socialism have nothing in common but one word: equality. But notice the difference. While democracy seeks equality and liberty, socialism seeks equality and restraint and servitude. On to the next quote. He says, Americans are so enamored of equality that they would rather be equal in slavery than unequal in freedom. That kind of goes hand in hand with the fact that having no ability to fight back and forth is a central form of government. And then finally, my favorite. The American Republic will endure until the day that Congress discovers that they can bribe the public with the public's money. Now, if you essentially look at it, that's exactly what's happening now. You've got all this money of proposed money going to public works. That's really coming from nowhere. It's really just the public's money being re-pooled, but you're baiting votes by it. It's the way that that any kind of republic, any kind of elected official can cease to exist. When you learn that you can bribe people to vote for you by just promising them more. And I want to finish with my kind of speech on anti-socialism, don't vote for Bernie, on I think the best quote ever written on socialism. That was by Winston Churchill. He says, socialism is a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is the equal sharing of misery. What's pretty much saying is that it's really not going to work. It's going to end badly. So it's time for us as young Americans to stop listening to all this promised free goods and start standing up for a true republic. And the only way we're going to do that, to start out with, is not voting for Bernie Sanders. Thank you for your time.